all that like negative self-talk is still not gonna mean anything because you actually did it. And next time you do it again, you're gonna get that much closer to actually drawing that line correctly. Hello and welcome to another video. This time we are drawing hair. We're practicing to draw hair. I actually did this a while ago and only now decided to share and record. So feel free to grab a piece of paper and draw with me or just listen. And I thought it would be fun to do 10 tips or more like 10 things that I learned from being an artist. It was a good opportunity for me to actually reflect on my own experience. And so point number 1 is just draw. Just do it. Simple, isn't it? And when I was starting out, now I'm just so glad that I was just doing it, you know? And of course it was easier back then because I was a kid and, you know, the weight of the world was not on my shoulders, and so I could just do it easily and not worry about anything else. And I understand that not everyone can do that, but if there's one thing I learned is that sometimes just doing it, no matter how imperfect that line is, you know, no matter how crappy the end result ends up being, it doesn't matter, you know. You put down the lines and so you have sharpened your skill at the end of the day. And it is gonna be imperfect and it is gonna suck. And yeah, you're probably gonna hate yourself for it if you're a very self-critical artist. But all of that like negative self-talk is still not gonna mean anything because you actually did it. And next time you do it again, you're gonna get that much closer to actually drawing that line correctly. And drawing that line how you envision that line in your mind. With hair, it's about, like, everything's about just, you know, flow. It's about those flowy lines and just lines that meet together and lines that curl. You know, I guess if you want to practice drawing hair, just practice drawing like squiggly lines that interconnect. That's, I guess, the best tip I have, because I have no idea how I could explain the anatomy of hair, you know. I guess this is the anatomy of hair. It's just lines that flow and interconnect, lines that come in front and behind each other. So my second thing that I learned from my art journey is that talent is a myth. Oh my god, guys, I actually have so much experience with people telling me I'm talented, and I hate it every time because it feels like such an extreme invalidation of all the just do it's that I did in my life, you know, and invalidation of perseverance and invalidation of thousands of hours. People go like, oh, you're just talented, as if me being talented suddenly means that like I can draw out of nowhere. That is bullshit. Talent does not fucking exist. Anyone who would put in the same, you know, 10,000 hours, probably more, well, let's just say 10 years of their time into drawing would be just as talented. The question is, do you actually have passion to put in that much, you know, energy into something? And that brings me to my third point, that talent is a myth, but passion isn't. Because it is passion that actually allows someone to put in so much work and for that not to feel like a burden. It's like more like a natural inclination, you know, towards something and like towards craft, you know, that brings you most joy. You know, having passion is an equivalent of talent, or at least in my eyes. Like, a lot of people mistake mistakenly, call passion talent, because I feel like talent is just like an empty word. It doesn't mean anything. There's no shortcuts towards being a good artist. I don't even consider myself such a good artist, but still, but being happy to do something is what allows you to do it for a long time, because it becomes not about the destination but about the journey. And that ultimately is what, people later call talent, is all that effort and all that passion that a person has towards specific craft. So yeah, talent is a myth, but passion is not. So my tip number 4 is figure out exactly what you like about art, what aspect of art. So for example, for me, it's like I need my art to be interconnected with storytelling, because otherwise I do not feel like that connected to it. So for me, it's not about the strokes and not about the technique. It's about the storytelling, and it's about seeing, my characters and seeing like the visuals, however they might be represented through whatever medium, kind of using art as a medium to showcase like my stories and do storytelling. And sometimes I do actually enjoy practicing like anatomy and stuff like that, but mostly it's like not my go-to. And I feel like this is a very important aspect, because if, for example, I would have stayed in art school, or I would have actually entered art school, I would have probably ended up not really enjoying art, because they're all about technicalities there. And that is not like an aspect of art that I love at all. They draw and they paint, but they're all about like realism and all that stuff, and for me, that is not what gives me passion for art. And for someone else, absolutely, that might be the case. And that might make you very happy and fill you with passion and allow you to put in, 10 years of yourself into that craft. But for me, it wasn't. Point number 5 is that pretty interesting one. So seek validation and approval, but do not draw for it. So I actually feel like I had to think about this for a second, because I actually really don't see a problem with showing your art to someone and wanting them to encourage you or give you approval for that art. And I was someone who was very rough on myself throughout my life. My art never received actually acknowledgement, because people in my environment didn't really care about it. So, and I try to follow this advice where people say don't seek validation, don't seek, it's good enough as it is. And at some point, I believe if you are a very confident artist, you do not need it. But as someone who's in the middle, who has never actually had enough encouragement, I personally don't actually see anything bad with it, with going out and being like, hey, look, I made this, look at this, this is amazing, and actually have people who can support you and encourage you, no matter if your art actually sucks. I mean, if you want critique, that's a different topic. But when it comes to just being an artist and just being supported in being creative, then I feel like it's very beneficial to go out and, seek validation from friends and accept that encouragement. But the pitfall is that it can become actually very addicting, approval and validation on the other side. And so I found myself, when I started doing this, I was like, oh, okay, validation, encouragement, super cool, but then I noticed that I'm actually trying to draw things that would impress this person. I'm starting to draw what this person likes, and I was like, well, that's so interesting. Why is that a thing? And I guess it comes down to basic, human psychology in the end, is that we're social species, and once we get approval, we kind of start, especially if we are more on the people pleaser spectrum, we start, molding ourselves to fit the other person. And I had to like rein myself in a little bit and be like, okay, look, this is not exactly what you want to draw right now. How about I just refocus on what I want to draw, and then once I draw it, I just find the person who will encourage me or, like it and stuff like that. So gotta be mindful about this one, but overall I feel like having people to encourage you and encourage your art is actually pretty beneficial, at least until you're like a super confident artist yourself. And I guess that brings me to point number 6, is that I did say like until you're a good artist, but it would actually do, I feel like, a lot of people good to just forget about becoming a good artist, because it's just, I don't know, my experience is that honestly, like, this obsession with becoming a good artist and like better and better is just, it's nothing but a rat race to perfection, and that perfection is a receding line at the end of the day, and it just actually just sucks out all the joy and all the passion from the process of creating art, because you're just drawing and you're just thinking about like, oh, okay, when am I gonna finish this piece so I can get onto the other one, and then my sketchbook is slowly filling up, and when am I gonna be done with my sketchbook, and it's just like, and your mind is just so in the future, so focused on what you want to be, that is just honestly just so draining and so tiring. And of course we can ask ourselves like, why do we have this obsession? And I feel like it's because like the brain latches onto something, some goal of what we might get once we're a good artist. So it's like maybe recognition, or maybe that same approval or validation that maybe we are not allowing ourselves to have right now, or we feel like we're not worthy. Maybe we feel like we would be worthy of like approval and validation only after we become a super good artist, which is not true. We can definitely get it like now if we just actually go looking for it. Yeah, I actually catch myself sometimes being stuck in this rat race. So like I'm drawing and I'm like noticing just this rush in my body, like I'm trying to get somewhere, like I'm not actually present with what I am drawing. And every time I have to bring myself back and be like, okay, you're actually not wanting to draw right now, you're wanting something else, because you're so desperately clinging to that vision of being a good artist, and you're just exhausting yourself. And that brings me to another point, is that expect the world to be much harsher than you, that the world is not gonna respect you unless you have achieved like Michelangelo level professionalism. The world is not gonna take you seriously, or at least majority of the people are not. And it is gonna be harsher, and they're not gonna understand possibly as easily as you would want them to, because, and I do not mean just, your art, because possibly people will look at the art and be like, oh, okay, that's pretty, and you have talent and whatever. But at the end of the day, most people on earth work 9 to 5, and most people on earth have that mentality and even like character of a specific way of existing. There's not much space in society to exist for creative individuals, from schools to job market, because it's not only our art, it's also how we create and how we function. Not all of us can have a routine. Not all of us can just suppress our feelings, because feelings oftentimes are just a part of being an artist and creating from pain or joy and letting it all flow. And the world, well, society, or like workaholic society, doesn't want that and doesn't support that. How rare is it to actually find a job? Well, I don't think that even exists unless you work for yourself, and that's why a lot of artists do work for themselves. Like to find a job that, where you can just cry and paint at the same time, for example, or sit in a corner for 10 minutes to get inspired, and just flow all over the place in order to create. Society and the standard job market will require rigidity, and they will require and expect for you to put yourself into a box. And some artists actually can do that. I actually have a friend who could do that, and she somehow managed, but not everyone can do that. And I would say that we are not even made to do that as creative types, and it hurts. And if I could go back to my younger self and give myself an advice, I would say that expect that they will not understand your way of functioning, and they will not understand how you flow and how you experience the world, and that they will try to put you into a box. Because I feel like that way the subsequent blows that came throughout my life would be so much easier to handle. And the society, that might be your parents, that might be your job, that might be your doctors, might be anyone, I guess. So that's why it was also so important, like for me, to find people who support and find approval for the way I am as an artist. That I'm not just like someone who can work 8 hours or even 6 hours a day at my desk, or just even not necessarily at my desk, but have this static job and then do that job like 5 days a week. Like, I cannot do that. I just don't function that way. And I understand some people do, and sometimes I actually really do want to be one of those people, but well, what can you do? So yeah, and I feel like because people don't understand this way of functioning, and it seems so trivial to them, and that's why they don't respect you. That's why they don't respect creative types, is because the way we function is not linear. It's not like we sit down, we work, and then we go home. No, it's like the process of creativity starts way before we pick up the pen. And the human society just has this idea that productivity and work looks a certain way. But for us, work is different. It's like, as artists, we work when we're taking a walk, for example, or we work when we are sleeping, because we are gathering all these ideas. We are getting inspired, we are processing, we are feeling, and the actual piece is just the finished result. And so because the human society doesn't understand that, they don't respect it, and they will not. And I feel like it's important to try and explain to more utilitarian people as to how this process works. When you're sitting and meditating and someone comes and goes like, why aren't you working? And no, I am working. This is a part of my work as an artist. And that's the thing, is that because society is so focused on the results, and the results are important, at the end of the day, you do want to produce art as an artist, not just sit and meditate. But we are not so focused on results, but more on the entire process, and the world does not really respect that, because the world human society uses people as, soldiers, like slaves, Human society exploits other people, and that is sad. But I wish, as artists, we would, start standing up for ourselves and for our way of being, no matter how hard it is. Or I wish someone told me that when I was younger. Here's my 7 tips for artists, what I have learned in my 15 years of being an artist, though a lazy one. And I hope your hair practice turned out good, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.